Hello and welcome everyone. A very warm good afternoon, all of you. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to the next session of this masterclass where we have been discussing the most important economics related topics that have been in the news in the last year or so from the prelims examination point of view. My name is Harshmeet Singh and this is your class number 5 for economics. So far, we have had 4 classes. We started this week on Monday. We have had a class every single day at 12. I hope if you have not attended any of the earlier classes, you will take out the time to attend those classes because these are extremely helpful, where we have been discussing all these important relevant topics in detail along with the practice questions for prelims exam. We'll do the same today. We again will take up a few of the most important and relevant topics that have been in the news in the last year or so from economics point of view. With each and every topic, we will also have a couple of practice questions and a previous year question as well to help you understand how to solve these kind of things. If you're new here, do hit the like and the subscribe button so that you are told about all the notifications about the classes that will be happening here on our channel. Before we begin, once again reminding you, we here at Narayana IAS Academy are here to help you out in your UPSC preparation journey. We are offering you 1 and 2 year courses depending on whichever your target year is. The entire course will cover your exclusive preparation for prelims, mains up till the stage of interview. There will be dedicated classes per week for current affairs. We'll also be focusing a lot on mains answer writing, on essay writing, prelims practice question and much more. All of this will be based on micro planning. Basically, each and everyone according to their own ability and schedule will be given a timetable so that you can follow that and achieve the success that you are hoping for. To get any information about any of the courses that we offer, please check out the description of this class, description of the YouTube video, where you will find a link and you can go to our website and get all the details that you require about our courses. We'll be happy to assist you if you have any questions regarding that. With that out of the way, let's see the first topic that we will be taking up today. The first topic that we will be taking up is MSP, the minimum support price. This is one of those topics that have remained in the news quite a lot. In the past few years, you have seen multiple farmer agitations in different parts of the country. Specifically, you've seen most of it originating in Punjab, Haryana, some in Uttar Pradesh. The farmers have been demanding a lot of things from the side of the government, but whenever there is a farmer protest, you will see that one demand that often gets covered in the news time and time again is that the farmers demand a legal guarantee of the MSP. Now, before we dive deep into why is it in the news, let's first understand the idea of what exactly is MSP and how does it work. Let's take a simple idea here. Let's say you are a farmer and you are growing rice on your field. Now, when you grow rice on your field and you want to sell it to earn profit, the price at which you will be able to sell it depends on a lot of factors. Maybe the buyers who are there to buy are not ready to offer you a good price. Maybe the season right now of rice is booming, so there is a lot of supply and you might not be able to sell it at the correct price. Also, you might not have the storage capability, so you have to urgently sell it and you will compromise for a lesser price. A lot of these factors come into play, because of which the prices of rice, for example, will fluctuate. It might go up, it might go down. Now, this is where the government comes in. The government of India wants to make sure that the farmers don't have to sell their rice below a certain level. So, for example, let's say the government of India will announce that for rice, MSP, again, let's assume is 30 rupees per kg. So, what the government essentially is saying to the farmers that you go and try to sell your rice in the market. If you are able to sell it at above 30 rupees per kg, if someone is offering you more than 30 rupees per kg, well and good, go and sell there. On the other hand, if you are not able to get a price higher than this, then come to me, that is the government, will buy your stock. That's a minimum slab that the government promises. At least this much money you will get. At least this much money that is the government, am ready to pay for your crop. This is called as a minimum support price. Again, this is not the maximum ceiling. The farmer can try and sell it at a much higher price in the market, and if they are successful, they should be allowed to do that. But at least this should be allowed, or this is the price guarantee that the government gives. This is what MSP is. Now, there are two important aspects of MSP that are a point of contention between the farmers and the government. The first point of contention about MSP is that is it legal or legally binding or not? Now, when I say legally binding, what I mean to say is there a law passed by the parliament, or is there something written in the constitution which makes it compulsory for the government to announce MSP, which makes it compulsory for the government to buy this stuff at MSP? No. There is no law in India that makes it binding on the government that the government must announce MSP every year or the government must procure the crops at MSP every year. The government does it, they have been doing it for a long time. It's just by an executive order. They don't do it because it is written in the law. This is what the farmers fear. The fear of the farmers is that because it is not legally binding, tomorrow if the government turns up and says, I will not offer you MSP, then the farmers would have nowhere to go. Meaning that if there would have been a law about it, farmers would have gone to the judiciary and told them that, see, government is not offering this to us, this is our right, and judiciary would have intervened. But when there is something which is not even written in the law and the government is doing it out of its own will, this is something the government can roll back whenever they want. So the first biggest demand that the farmers have from the side of the government is, please make it legally binding, which the government has not accepted. It's a very curious situation. The government on one hand keeps on saying that don't worry, we are not rolling back the MSP, it will remain with you. But on the other hand, the government does not even want to make it legally binding. The other part of the argument is the value. That is, how do you decide what exactly will be the MSP number for different crops? How do you decide what will be the MSP for rice, for wheat, for other kind of crops? How exactly does the government arrive at that formula? Now, we'll discuss in detail, but the simple logic, as you would expect, is farmers want as much as MSP as possible, that is the highest amount. The government would not want that because that would mean an increased pressure on the government. So there has to be a balance between the two. Now, one more thing before we go deeper into it, we say that the government procures all this crop at the MSP. The other question is, what does the government do with that crop? If government has taken so much rice, if government has bought so much rice or wheat and all these crops from the farmers, what does the government do with it? Now, first of all, how does the government procure this? The government has an agency called Food Corporation of India. Food Corporation of India is a government agency that has the responsibility of buying the farmers, procuring the crops, storing the crops. Second question, what does the government do with it? Now, what the government does with it is, as you know, the government runs a lot of welfare programs. For example, we have something called the National Food Security Act, under which rice is offered at 3 rupees per kg, wheat is offered at 2 rupees per kg, other coarse grains including millet are offered at 1 rupees per kg. So government has to release a lot of food grains in the market, give it to the people under these schemes. We also have the Antyodaya Yojana, we have the PDS program, under which the government of India has to give a lot of food grains at highly subsidized prices. This is where this particular procurement from the farmer comes in handy. So whatever the government procures, they usually release in the form of these schemes. Additionally, the government also has to stabilize the price of commodities. So for example, if we have a situation where, let's say, price of wheat or rice is increasing all of a sudden because of lack of supply, the government will release its stock in the market. So they'll ask the Food Corporation of India to sell some of the stuff in the market so that the supply gets a boost and the prices stabilize. This is why the government procures all these things. Now, why is it in the news? The reason why we are discussing why it is in the news is that recently the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Agriculture, Animal Husbandry and Food Processing has recommended that we should give it a legal backing. So for the first time, they have recommended we should make it legally binding. Remember, I just discussed this, that the one big factor that has been a point of contention between the farmers and the government is farmers want the MSP to be legally binding, but the government has not accepted it so far. This is what the parliamentary committee says. They say that it should be accepted. Again, it's just a recommendation. The final decision obviously lies with the government of India only. One more thing, here you see a keyword called standing committee. I hope all of you know what this is. There are two types of committees in the parliament. There are ad hoc committees and there are standing committees. Ad hoc committees means committees which are formed, which are established on a case to case basis. So if you need a committee right now to examine a certain matter, if you need a committee right now to discuss a certain matter, and when the matter has been discussed, the committee will be dissolved. That is an ad hoc committee. So ad hoc committee only works for the time period for which they were formed. They would serve a certain purpose. Once that purpose is done, that will be dissolved. Standing committees, on the other hand, means permanent. So there will always be a committee like this. There will always be a committee like this. That is a standing committee. The members keep on changing. Members usually have a 1 year tenure. After 1 year, the members will change, but such a committee will always exist. That is called a standing committee. So do remember that part as well. Now, as I told you, MSP is something that the government decides every single year. The government announces. It is not on all the crops, by the way. It is on 23 in total. A lot of crops are not included here. This is something that the government started to do back in the 1960s. Back in the 1960s, it was around the same time that the Green Revolution was taking place in India. The government wanted to give a further push to farming. The government wanted to assure the farmers of a certain amount of income that they can be assured of. The government wanted to tell the farmers that you won't be blackmailed in the market. Don't worry, we have your back. We will give you a certain minimum price. This is when it was implemented. Also, if you remember, after India's independence, India had a lot of issues. One big issue, the severe problem that we faced in India, was a food shortage. We did not have enough food grains for ourselves. In fact, we were dependent on other countries to give us food. Very famously, America used to run a program for developing countries called PL 480. You might have heard about this or read about this in history. America used to run a program for developing countries called PL 480. PL here stands for public law. So there was a law that they had passed under which America used to supply food grains to poor countries around the world. Those who don't have enough food grains. India was a part of this. India used to get food grains from America, and we were highly dependent on them for food grain supply. It was not a great situation, but we had no other option. The food grains that used to come from America under the PL 480 program, but not of very high quality. They were mostly rejected food grains that were coming in from US. It was not exactly free. So how it used to work was that when America used to send some ships, so let's say once a week or twice a week, these big ships would come in from America, which will have these food grains. Now, Indian government would have to pay a certain amount of money for that. It was a pretty low amount, but the government of India had to pay that money. What America did was, America did not take that money outside the country, outside India. So what they said was, we will charge you some amount. So Indian government would have to pay that money, but America would invest that money in India only. So they would, let's say, build some infrastructure in India. From that money, let's say they would build a hospital, they will build a school, they would build something like that in India itself. So that was a PL 480 program. It was also because America wanted India, after India became independent, to become a capitalist country. They were trying to attract us into their group, which India did not join. India became a non-aligned country. Anyway, so we soon realized that we, for our basic needs like food, can't be dependent on these countries and their whims and fancies. And this is why in 1960, the Green Revolution started in India with the efforts of scientists such as Norman Borlaug and later on M.S. Swaminathan. We had Green Revolution. Now, this was implemented Green Revolution was implemented to give a push to food grain production in India. But just because the government wanted something done, it can't be done automatically. You need to have farmers on your side as well. So you need to ensure that farmers also are growing crops. How do you encourage the farmers? This is where MSP came into picture. You assure the farmers that don't worry, whatever you are producing, if no one is buying it, at least the government will buy it at a handsome price. And this is the idea of how the MSP came into picture. Now, how is the MSP decided, or who decides the MSP? So as of today, MSP is fixed by the central government on the recommendation, of CACP. This particular fact has been asked by UPSC. They have asked us in the prelims that on whose recommendation MSP decided, that is CACP, which is Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices. Now, please do understand the distinction between the two. If the UPSC is asking you who recommends the MSP, then the answer will be CACP. That is the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. They recommend. But remember, recommendations are not binding on the government. They recommend and then the final decision will be taken by the government only. So even if they, let's say, give a certain level that this is the amount at which we should buy rice, it's not that the government will have to accept that. The government will take a final call eventually. The Food Corporation of India, as I said, is a body that they work with the state agencies to procure this crop or procure all these things at the MSP. So Food Corporation of India plays a key role here. Not just do they procure it, but they also have to store it. So they have many godowns across the country. They also distribute it under the government schemes. This is how the Food Corporation of India comes into the picture. It's a key agency for the government to ensure food security. Now, MSP is offered on these crops. Now, this very unique case here. If you add all these, for example, 7 plus 7, 14, plus 5, 19, plus 4, it seems to be 23. Now, in certain books or in certain articles, you might see they would say that MSP is offered for 22 crops. Now, how is this, or what is the confusion here? The confusion here is about this sugarcane. Why have we mentioned this here? Why are we including this? So, for sugarcane, it's a slightly different story. For sugarcane, there is a different kind of a price offered that is called FRP, fair and remunerative price. This is for, it works like sugar MSP only. The name is fair and remunerative price. We will discuss about this in the next topic. Once we complete MSP, we will discuss in detail how FRP works. But if some books or some literature tells you that it is offered for 22 crops, then it is usually something like 22 crops and sugarcane. So either you can write it is offered in 22 crops plus sugarcane, or you can write offered in 23 crops including sugarcane. But again, the name that is given here for sugarcane is fair and remunerative price. We will discuss later on what is the difference between the MSP and FRP, but this is how the MSP is offered. Again, it is not on everything that you grow. There are certain things on which MSP is given. For example, paddy, that is rice, wheat, maize, bajra, jowar, ragi, barley, and then rapeseed, mustard, groundnut, soybean, sunflower, etc. Then on 5 pulses, and on commercial crops like cotton, copra, raw jute, etc. In all of these things, MSP is offered. Now, you know, the government of India very often says that farmers in India are producing too much wheat and too much rice, especially in fertile states such as Punjab, where they have a potential to grow a lot of the things. A lot of them are focused only on wheat and rice, and India has a surplus supply of rice. It's a very unique case study about rice. If you compare rice or paddy, whatever you want to call it, if you compare rice and wheat, for example, rice consumes much more water as compared to wheat. So, when you are growing rice in a quantity that is much larger, much bigger than what is consumed in the country, that means you are using a lot of water from our resources. You are using a lot of our groundwater, extracting it to grow rice. And that rice is then exported to the other parts of the world. That rice is exported to other countries. So, indirectly, by exporting rice, we are actually exporting a lot of our own groundwater. I hope it is making sense to you that we are making rice in a much larger quantity than what we consume in India, and then we export it. But the problem is making of rice or harvesting of rice requires a lot of groundwater to be extracted. So while giving out or while selling rice, what we are essentially doing is we are actually using and extracting a lot of our groundwater and exporting that. That is why the government has been trying to push farmers away from rice and wheat. For that to be done, one of the things that the government can do is offer a higher MSP on other products. If you really want the farmers, for example, to grow something else, bring them out of their comfort zone, the one way to do that is push them away from it by giving higher MSP on the other products as well. Now, as I said, it's recommended usually on 22 crops and sugarcane. So either you write 23 or you write 22 crops plus sugarcane. It's recommended by CACP, the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, and then the cabinet takes a final call. In the past few years, some other thing has also happened related to this. That is, the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, in order to give a boost to tribal farming, have also been doing something similar for certain minor forest produce. So the tribal families that live in the forest, they also grow a certain number of things that are used in medicines, etc., in their tribal areas. So the Tribal Affairs Ministry as a separate initiative also announces that we will also be able to buy some stuff which comes under minor forest produce strategy. Minor produce of the forest basically includes a lot of things excluding the timber. So excluding the wood basically that is coming in from the tree, the other produce from the trees etc. usually included in the minor forest produce, that is separate. That procurement and the buying of these kind of things from tribal areas, that is a responsibility of Tribal Cooperative Marketing Development Federation, or TRIFED as it is called. So TRIFED is the implementing agency of these things when it comes to tribal areas, while in other parts of the country it is the Food Corporation of India that would do all these things. Now, how is MSP determined and calculated? As I said, first of all, the agency, that is who recommends it, it is the CACP. The second big problem is how is it calculated. Now, this is where it gets tricky, and this is where the farmers and the government do not see eye to eye. Now, to understand how MSP is calculated or what factors are taken into consideration, you have to understand three things here: A2, FL and C2. Now, please understand these carefully. First of all, A2. A2 means all the input cost of the farmer. So, when the farmer is undertaking a crop production, they'll have to buy a lot of stuff: seeds, fertilizers, equipments, whatever is required. So, all the input cost that the farmer has to invest before they start functioning, that is called A2 first. Second component is FL. FL means family labor. Family labor means when the farmer is working on the field, in most of the cases, multiple members of the family work together on the field. So, let's say farmer's spouse, wife or husband, wife most probably, because if you consider male as a main farmer, then wife, maybe kids, maybe brother in the family, sister in the family, whatever. So, there may be multiple members of the family who are working together on the field. Now, if these people would have been working somewhere else, if these people would have been doing some other job, then they would have been getting paid, right? So, if they are working on their own family farm, then also there has to be a cost involved. You can't assume that they are free labor, because the same people would have earned some money somewhere else. So, the money that they would have otherwise earned somewhere else, they deserve to be paid that. That is called as family labor cost. Right now in India, how is MSP calculated? The government uses this A2, input cost, plus FL into 1.5. This is the present system. That is, the government gives a 50% margin. They will add all this input cost and the family labor cost, multiplied by 1.5. This is called the present. This is how the present MSP is actually calculated. Now, the farmers are not happy with it. Why? The farmers want something else to be added in this. What is it that the farmers want? Farmers want that not 2 but 3 components should be added. The third component is called as C2. What is C2? C2 is rental cost. Means MS Swaminathan, one of the most famous agriculture scientists of India, recently awarded Bharat Ratna also. MS Swaminathan, he gave what he thought was a good formula, the correct formula for calculating MSP. So, when MS Swaminathan gave his formula of how MSP should be calculated, he used a third factor as well called C2. What is C2? C2 is the rental cost, meaning that according to him, a lot of farmers, they don't have their own land to do the farming. So, a lot of farmers first take land on rent and then they do farming on that land. So, the rent that they have to pay, that is a rental cost, that is C2 and that also should be included. That is the idea. The rental cost is the third component, rental cost of that land. Now, the argument from the side of the government does not include this. Government does not add C2. Why? The government says that most of the farmers in India don't take land on rent to do farming. Most of the farmers in India, basically, if they have to do farming, they do it on their own farm. They don't do it in someone else's farm. But MS Swaminathan and now the farmers, you would see when the farmers are protesting against the government, One of their demands is, please adopt the MS Swaminathan formula. Now, what is that formula? This formula basically is that you have to include this rental cost as well, that is C2 also has to be included here, but the government does not include it right now. For now, our MSP calculation does not include the rental cost. Now, the CSCP that we were talking about, this is the body that has been asked in the prelims exam earlier as well, as I told you. This is an important body because they are the ones who recommend how much MSP should be kept that the government announces at the beginning of the year. So, CSCP works under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare as expected. It is again an old body, 1965, it's a statutory body. We discussed earlier as well, there are different types of bodies in the government. Statutory bodies are the ones that have been created through an act of parliament. They have a statutory backing. They recommend the MSP on notified crops. They also, after that, motivate the farmers and the cultivators to ensure that they have latest technology. Plus, whatever they do, however, is never binding on the government. So, please understand, whatever committees, commissions that the government makes, whatever recommendations they give, they are never binding on the government. Ultimately, why would the government want to create any body that can force the government to do what they want? No. The government will always want to have a free hand. The government would never want that someone would put pressure on them to accept whatever they want. The only exception here is the only commission whose recommendation government cannot change is the delimitation commission. Something that you would have read in Indian polity, the delimitation commission that looks into redrawing of constituencies in the country based on the different population patterns after census. That is one commission whose recommendations can't be changed by the government. Apart from that, every other commission, including the Union Public Service Commission, UPSC, even their recommendations are not binding on the government. So, government usually accepts it, the MSP specifically, but it is never binding on the government. The government takes a final call. Now, they are the ones that take a lot of research about how the different crops are grown, what is the family labor cost that should be put, what is the cost of input. After all of that is taken into consideration, then they give the MSP numbers to the cabinet, and the cabinet then of the government takes the final call. Now, in the past, there have been multiple committees formed specifically on the matter of agriculture and farmer welfare in the country. The MS Swaminathan committee, very famous. It is their formula that has led to all this issue between the government and the farmers about calculation of MSP. But apart from that, also there are many other committees that have been formed in the past that you should know about. For example, in 2004, there was a committee formed called the National Commission for Farmers under MS Swaminathan. Again, as I was telling you, they are the ones that recommended that 50% of profit or 50% should be the margin that should be kept to decide the MSP. The MS Swaminathan committee or the National Commission for Farmers, it is the same thing. This is the committee that had decided or that had recommended that rental cost of the land should also be included, but the government has not done this so far. We also had a Shanta Kumar committee. It's recent. The Shanta Kumar committee was set up in 2014. That was specifically aimed at looking into the working of the Food Corporation of India. It's a very interesting agency, the Food Corporation of India. They are the ones responsible for procuring crops from the farmers, then storing it. The government always uses them to in fact borrow from the market in order to have off-budget borrowing. The government also has been trying to expand their capability, their capacity. They have thousands of godowns across the country, but they're still trying to expand because their storage capacity is still not up to the mark, and it is still not enough to store all the crops that are procured by them. So, Food Corporation of India, how to improve their working, that is something that was suggested by the Shanta Kumar committee. They recommended shift from price-based to income-based support from the farmers, meaning that they said that rather than helping all the farmers by announcing MSP, we are not doing a targeted, or we are not taking a targeted approach. Means they said that MSP is required by farmers who are poor and who can't afford to actually go in the next crop cycle without enough money. The current version of MSP as per this committee is helping the richer farmers more and the poor farmers lesser, and the government has to spend a lot of money. So they suggested that MSP and these kind of activities should be targeted towards smaller farmers, farmers that are earning lesser amount of money. That is how this kind of a scheme like the MSP would have a much better impact. That's what the Shanta Kumar committee had suggested, but government did not really change the MSP based on them. On that note, let's see if you are able to answer a few questions. I have a few practice questions, couple of them, and then a related previous year question. Read this carefully, maybe take a pause on this screen and then think about what the answer should be. You can lock in your answer in your mind. Then you can play again to see if you got this right or wrong. All right, let's see. With reference to the MSP mechanism in India, consider the following statements. Number one, MSP are legally binding prices below which no agriculture produce can be sold in any mandi across the country. No, we just discussed this in the very beginning. This is what the farmers demand. They want that MSP should be legally binding, but there is no law about it. There is no mention in the constitution, there is no law that has been passed in the parliament about it. Although the government continuously announces the MSP in the beginning of the year, but this is not legally binding. Now the problem with this is, number one, because it is not legally enforceable, a lot of farmers say that even though the government announces the MSP, they are not able to sell all their produce to the Food Corporation of India. Please understand, the Food Corporation of India, whether they are able to buy everything from the farmers at MSP or not, depends upon a lot of factors. It is said that if you look at the working of the Food Corporation of India, mainly when it comes to farmers from Haryana, Punjab, Western UP, they are able to procure most of the things that the farmers are producing. On the other hand, we have a situation where the farmers from, let's say, states such as Bihar, let's say states such as Chhattisgarh, etc., they are demanding that the Food Corporation of India should be buying from them as well. The Food Corporation of India and their working is restricted due to a lot of factors. That is why if it is actually made legally enforceable, we will have a situation wherein the Food Corporation of India would have to buy it from them at any cost, and this is where the government has not been very interested in taking that step forward. So no, it is not legally enforceable right now. Second, the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Price, that is CACP, recommends MSP for both Kharif and Rabi crops, but final approval rests with the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. We did discuss this. This is how it works. The Government of India takes the final call, that is their Cabinet Committee. Now, there are multiple Cabinet Committees that you might have heard about. The Cabinet Committee specifically, again, there are different types of Cabinet Committees which are dependent on the Prime Minister. There used to be 6 Cabinet Committees earlier, now there are 8 Cabinet Committees. For example, there is a Cabinet Committee on Security, there is a Cabinet Committee on Accommodation, Cabinet Committee on Appointments. Similarly, we have a Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. They are the ones who take the final call. We discussed that whatever recommendations are given to them are not binding on them. Remember that part. The calculation of MSP by CACP is solely based on A2FL cost concept. We did discuss this. And what did we tell you? What is the other component which is not taken into consideration? That is C2. The C2 part, that is a rental cost for the land, is not taken into consideration. Although the MS Swaminathan committee in 2004 did suggest that this should be taken into consideration. The farmers also want this, but the government has not taken this into consideration. The government's argument is most farmers in India don't take land on rent to do farming. MS Swaminathan was saying that no, rental cost should be a part of it. So, 2 of these are correct, second and third, the first one is wrong. The answer would be B. I hope you got this one right as well. This is, if you want, you can take a screenshot of the explanation if you think it would help you in revising later on. Moving on to the next one then. Again, read carefully, take a moment, maybe you can pause on the screen if you want, lock in your answer, think what the answer would be, and then you can play again. Consider the following implication of a legally guaranteed MSP regime in India. First, it can distort the cropping patterns by encouraging cultivation of water-intensive crops in water-scarce regions. Yes, a big problem. We just discussed about the problem of over-cultivation of rice in states such as Punjab. Because rice or paddy, it takes a lot more water than wheat, for example, and it is easily cultivable in fertile states such as Punjab. A lot of farmers resort to that because they know that they can get a better price, they can get good MSP for that. There's a good demand for rice outside the country as well. So if the government makes it legally binding that you have to give MSP every single year at a certain level, even more farmers will take up these kind of activities like taking up water intensive crops. It will be a discouraging sign for the farmers who want to diversify. It will it will be a step back in the government's efforts to push the farmers towards diversifying into cash crops and into other commodities. So first is correct. Second, it can lead to fiscal stress due to open-ended procurement obligations by the government. That is absolutely correct. Do you know right now, and I'm talking about the present context, do you know what is the biggest subsidy bill for the government, or which is the area on which the government spends the biggest subsidy amount? If you go back a few years, let's say go back a decade or so, it used to be fertilizer. That on urea, government used to spend the most amount. But today, as of today, the biggest subsidy bill of the government is actually on food subsidy. Food subsidy is the biggest subsidy bill that the government has to actually burden. Second, after this comes the fertilizer subsidy. The major part of food subsidy is because of the government procurement at the MSP. The programs such as the National Food Security Program, the Antyodaya Yojana, under which the government has to give food grains at a much lesser cost and buy at a much higher cost, that leads to fiscal stress. And this fiscal stress issue will increase even further if you make MSP legally binding. Third, it can affect India's compliance with WTO's agreement on agriculture if MSP exceeds de minimis level. That is absolutely correct. WTO sets a certain limit about how much can you procure or how much subsidy can you give. That level for developing countries is 10% of the production. So for a developing country like India, the maximum amount of subsidy that we can give in terms of buying stuff from the farmers is 10% of our production. That is called a de minimis limit. If we make it legally binding, we anyways are over 10%, by the way. If we make it legally binding, we have to procure even more stuff at MSP. And our food subsidy bill will go even more through the roof. So third is also correct. The answer thus is D. All these things will be the implications of a situation where MSP has been made legally guaranteed in India. So D would be the correct answer here. If you want, feel free to take a screenshot here. Moving on to a related previous year question then. This was a question asked in 2020. Read it carefully and maybe take a pause and see if you can answer this. Consider the following statements. In case of all cereals, pulses and oil seeds, the procurement of MSP is unlimited in any state or UT of India. That is what I told you doesn't happen. Procurement is affected by a lot of factors. Whether Food Corporation of India has the capacity to store that much in that part of the country, availability at the mandis, whether farmers are able to get in touch with the Food Corporation of India or not. So ideally it should be equal and should be open for procurement all around the country. But in reality, unfortunately, the procurement is very skewed in favor of certain states. Certain states like Punjab and Haryana do see quite a good amount of procurement from the Food Corporation, while the other states do not, unfortunately. In case of cereals and pulses, MSP is fixed in any state or UT at a level to which the market price will never rise. No, that is not true. It's not that MSP is always above the market price. MSP is just a guarantee that if you are not able to sell at a higher price than this, then you can come to them. But MSP is not set at a price where the market price will never rise. In fact, in most of the cases, many farmers are able to sell at a price higher than the MSP in the market. So farmers don't come to the government or Food Corporation of India. Both of these are wrong. Answer will be D. This again was a previous year question that the UPSC had asked in 2020. If you want, you can take a screenshot here for a revision. Moving on to the next topic. When we were discussing MSP, in the beginning we had made a mention of how procurement for sugarcane is different, how MSP is announced for 22 crops plus sugarcane. The price that is announced for sugarcane is not called MSP. The price that is announced for sugarcane is called fair and remunerative price. Now, how is that different? Why is it that sugarcane procurement is different as compared to others? Now, let's imagine a situation. The government of India, for example, buys wheat or paddy or rice from the farmers because they can then sell it to the poor people or they can give it to the poor people. Why would the government buy sugarcane? Do you need sugarcane in your house? Do you use sugarcane on a day-to-day basis? No. Government would not buy sugarcane. The sugarcane is bought by sugar mills that then produce sugar out of it, and then sugar goes into the market. So the difference between the other crops procurement by the government of India as compared to sugarcane is that sugarcane is not procured by the government because the government doesn't need it. It is procured by the sugar mills. They put the sugarcane through the process and they make sugar out of it, and then the sugar becomes a part of the market. So that is why it is not MSP that is announced for the sugarcane, the price that is announced by the government that the sugar mills have to pay. That is called fair and remunerative price. It's an interesting situation. The sugar mills rather in many parts of the country are under a lot of pressure. Many of the sugar mills say that we are drowning in losses, we are not able to pay the farmers the amount of money that the government wants us to pay. Farmers that grow sugarcane on the other hand are under stress, they say that their payments have been delayed. So sugar and sugarcane has been a pretty stressful story in the Indian farm sector. Not just this, as people are becoming more and more conscious about their health and eating habits, the demand for sugar is also coming down, not just in India but around the world as well. Then there are news stories about sugar not being safe enough and there are a lot of mixing of contaminants in the sugar. So sugar industry specifically has been a lot in the news and mostly negatively. The reason why it is in the news is that the government of India increased this price, that is a fair and remunerative price, for sugarcane growers by 25 rupees to 340 rupees per quintal. Again, remember, this is the price not at which the government is buying. Government is not buying sugarcane. This is a price at which the government is saying the sugar mills that you have to buy the sugarcane at this price. The government is not buying this because the government doesn't have any need for sugarcane. It is a sugar mills that will be buying at this price. Now, this is again, it's similar to how the MSP is decided. It is decided by the government of India on the recommendation again of the CACP. So it is the same thing. The same CACP recommends to the government and the same Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs will take the final call of announcing. The only difference is that this is a price for the sugarcane, for the sugar mills to procure the sugarcane and not really from the side of the government. Earlier, there was another system which was called as statutory minimum price. This was again a similar kind of a system where the farmers were told that this is the compensation that you will get irrespective of the sugar mill's profitability. That was a big issue. The sugarcane mills said that we are facing losses if we procure at this price. How can we go ahead and pay this price to the farmers? In that system, which was called the statutory minimum price, the sugar mills had to pay that price no matter what. Now what has happened, the price of sugarcane that the government decides, fair and remunerative price, it is slightly flexible. How flexible is it? See, there are different types of sugarcanes. Sugarcane is better or successful if you can extract more sugar out of it. The more sugar content it has, the more profitable it will be for the sugar mills as well. So now the situation is, the fair and remunerative price that the government recommends, it is flexible in nature and it can change depending upon the sugar levels in the sugarcane. It may go up and it may go down as well if the level of sugar in the sugarcane is not up to a certain level. So for sugar mills also it's a better situation, that if they think that they can't pay this much price, the sugarcane is not of the required quality, they may reduce the price slightly, but if it is of a certain quality and better than that, the farmers will get a better price out of it. So it works both ways. Now, the fair and remunerative price, that is the FRP as we are saying, has been problematic because many of the farmers say that they are not getting the money from the sugar mills in the correct amount of time. Means there's a lot of delay in the payment. We have seen, in fact, that delays in payment now can attract a penalty of interest up to 15% per annum. Means if the sugar mills are not paying to the farmer, so right now the law is when the sugar mills procure the sugarcane from the farmer, within 14 days, that is within 2 weeks of that delivery, they have to pay the money to the farmer. If they fail to pay money to the farmer within these 2 weeks, within the 14-day time period, then there will be an interest put on that, and the interest will be up to 15% per annum. There will be a sugar commissioner appointed by the government. The sugar commissioner will be the one who will have the authority over the sugar mills, because the farmers are not strong or powerful enough to put pressure on the sugar mills. So this is something that will be done by the sugar commissioner. If the sugarcane mills fail to do this, fail to pay the farmers in time, or they have not been doing this, or they have not been following up on their promise, even the properties of the sugar mills can be attached, and these properties can be taken away by the government. Now, the prices of sugarcane, that is the FRP, is slightly more complicated as compared to how MSP is decided. For MSP, we just saw government has two main factors in the mind. That is the input cost, that is the A2, and the family labor, that is the FL. So they take these two things into consideration. However, when it comes to deciding the FRP, fair and remunerative price for the sugarcane, it's a slightly more complicated process. That is, for sugarcane, for example, they have to take into consideration a lot of factors, including the cost of production, how much is the farmer spending, return to the growers from alternative crops, means people who are actually coming in, ditching other crops and going into the sugarcane industry, are you compensating them? How much sugar is being recovered? As I told you, fair and remunerative price is flexible in that sense. If more sugar can be extracted from that sugarcane, it will be highly priced. If lesser sugar can be extracted, the price will get lower. Price at which sugar is produced, and then there are other factors like general trends, availability of sugar to consumers, all of these things are taken into consideration. So fair and remunerative price, the determination of that value is much more complicated than the MSP. It's not just based on a simple straightforward formula. It's based on a lot of factors, and that is why it remains slightly more controversial and debatable as compared to the MSP specifically. Now, how is it paid? As I said, it's paid mainly at the price decided by the government, and then there is a flexible factor about the sugar recovery. How much sugar can be recovered? Let me just tell you how much sugar is recovered and how is it decided. Let's see this. So basically, let's say the government decides that FRP, that is fair and remunerative price, is 305 rupees per quintal. Okay, that is assuming that a sugar cane will have 10.25% sugar. That's assuming that from one sugar cane, if you look at the weight of the sugar cane, for example, of that weight, 10.25% of weight of sugar can be extracted. However, if there is 0.1% increase from this, for every 0.1% increase in recovery, the farmer will get a premium of rupees 3.05 per quintal. Meaning that if a sugarcane or if a farmer has given sugarcane and that sugarcane has, let's say, 10.35% of sugar content, that means plus 1. For him, the price will be 305 plus 3.05. So for every 0.1% increment in the sugar level, the price given to the farmer will increase by 3 rupees 5 paisa per quintal. So that's the upside for the farmer. On the other hand, there is a downside as well if the quality is not matched up. That means if 0.1% level, if it goes 0.1% level lower, then there will be a drop. The farmer will again receive a reduction in the same ratio up to 9.5%. So you can't give a very low price to the farmer because farmer can't decide, or farmer doesn't influence how much sugar would a sugarcane have. There are many other factors, so you can't let the farmer go into a lot of losses. So you keep on reducing FRP For every 1% you keep on reducing 3.05 rupees up till 9.5%. That is a basic, that is a minimum level. That is how FRP works. So it's, as you can see, much more flexible than MSP. It's not one fixed amount. It can go up, it can go down, mainly depending upon the sugar content in the sugarcane. So it works both ways. For the interest of the mills, it works because if it has lower sugar content, they'll have to pay a lower price. On the other hand, it works for the farmer as well, because if their produce is of higher quality, if their produce has much more sugar, they will be entitled to get more money out of it. So both are happy, and this is again how it is different from the earlier concept where a specific amount of money had to be given. This is how it is different. Do remember this. This is the difference between the MSP and the FRP. As I told you, MSP decided by government on a few factors. FRP is determined by market forces as well. The demand for sugar in the market, the end consumer, at what price are they buying sugar, etc. Then it is specifically for sugarcane, therefore multiple crops, profit margin is variable and fixed. This is the difference between MSP and FRP. Alright, then I have a few questions for you once again. Read this carefully in detail, lock in your answer, think what the answer should be, and then you can play once again. Alright. Consider the following statements regarding FRP of sugarcane in India. Number 1. FRP is announced by Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs based on the recommendation of CSCP, that is Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. That is correct. Exactly the same applies for MSP as well. So even if the statement would have said MSP or FRP, both of them in the same manner are decided on these recommendations. FRP is applicable nationwide and binding on all sugar mills irrespective of state set prices. No. So this is where it gets slightly different. The slight difference here is, in case of sugarcane, states also have the flexibility to decide their own special prices. If that price is higher than the FRP, then that price applies. So the states, let's say for example Maharashtra, because Maharashtra grows a lot of sugarcane. Let's say Maharashtra decides that we want to decide a price which is higher than the FRP. That's a special price. Let's say Government of India decided 300 rupees per quintal. They decide that we want to offer 330 rupees per quintal. That's a state special price. Then the state price will be applicable. So states also do have certain flexibility to make it even higher. So second here is wrong. Third, sugar mills are legally bound to pay FRP within 14 days of the cane purchase. Yes, as I told you, if they don't pay it in 14 days, within 2 weeks, that is, there can be interest imposed on them up to 15% per annum. This is why there is a legally binding limit. 1 and 3 are correct. Out of these 3, 2 statements are correct. B would be the answer here. Okay. If you want, take a screenshot, you can revise it later. Next, it's an assertion reasoning based question, maybe slightly new for some of you. Take a pause on this screen, read it carefully, lock in your answer, and then you can play again. Alright. So the question is assertion. Fair and remunerative price aims to ensure cane farmers receive a minimum guaranteed price regardless of the market condition. That is correct. It does same kind of a thing, or it serves a similar kind of purpose like the MSP, with slight differences, giving more potential to farmers to earn even more depending upon the sugar content in the sugarcane. Second, or reason, FRP is calculated based solely on international sugar price. No, that is wrong. International sugar price may be one of the factors, but it is not the sole factor. As you know, there are multiple other factors that are taken into consideration on the basis of which FRP is decided. So assertion is true, reason is false, and there is only one statement that matches. This is C. Assertion reason based questions can be asked in the prelims. Earlier, if you go back a few years, assertion reason based questions were very common. Bunch of them were asked. Now in the past few years, you might see 3 or 4 of them in one single year. So you should know how to solve these as well. C is the correct answer here. Sorry. If you want, you can take a screenshot from here as well. Moving on, let's see if you can answer a related previous year question from this. It's a related question, not the exact one. Read this carefully, lock in your answer, and then maybe you can play it again. The question is, the economic cost of food grains to the Food Corporation of India is minimum support price and bonus paid to the farmer plus what? So, for the Food Corporation of India, that is the agency that is procuring the food crops, for them what exactly is the overall cost? How much are they spending? They are spending MSP plus if any bonus has to be paid plus what else? Transportation cost only, interest cost only, procurement incidentals and distribution costs, procurement incidental and charges of the godowns. The answer here is C. The cost that the Food Corporation of India has to bear, that is the cost that comes into their cash book, comes into their accounts, is the money that they pay to the farmers, and apart from that, the money that they are paying for procuring for all these vehicles. For example, they'll have to spend a lot of money on their tractors, on their trucks, etc., for procurement of the crops, then distributing it again. Because see, Food Corporation of India doesn't just procure the crops. They've taken the crop, but that's just one side of the story. Then they would have to also distribute it under the different government schemes. The National Food Security Program, the PDS, that is the Public Distribution System, all of this is again an added cost to the Food Corporation of India. So C is the correct answer. Not the charges for godowns. Godowns are their own, so they don't really have to pay for them. It is the distribution cost and the procurement cost that they have to pay. So answer here would be C. This was the question asked in 2020. So as you can see, every few years you do see a question either from MSP or from FRP depending upon time to time. But you would see a very common category of these questions. So do pay attention to this topic as well. Moving on to the next topic then. Although the government has not conducted the census of human beings, that is, our census that was supposed to be conducted in 2021 has not been conducted so far. But the government has said, don't worry, humans, we are at least doing it for the livestock. So India also does a livestock census once in every 5 years. So the government of India has started this entire process, because see, census takes a long time. But for livestock, the livestock census process has started. This is the 21st livestock census. That is why it is in the news. Again, 21st livestock census started by the Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying. Please understand that data of this census has not come out so far. The data collection has happened, but the official data has not come out from the side of the government. So we are still not sure about the exact details of it. We know a few details such as what are the things that were counted, is there any new addition, is there any new way of counting animals, etc. That is something that we do know. But what exactly is the outcome of this 21st livestock census, we don't know. So what we will be doing here is we will be discussing what is new, that is what new methodology, what new technique was used in the 21st livestock census, if any, and we will be discussing a bit of data from the 20th livestock census, that is the one that was conducted in 2019. So the last one that was in 2019, that was the 20th. There, that data is already available everywhere, that's in the public domain. The 21st one, as I said, the data collection has happened, but the data has not been publicly released so far, so we don't have that. Now, this particular census, as the name suggests, is a census of the livestock. So what do? They count all the domesticated animals, poultry and stray animals in India. Now, it's not easy to have an exact number on that, but it actually at least gives you a lump sum idea about how many animals do we have here. It's conducted by the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, which works under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare. And the data basically is on a lot of different varieties like indigenous breeds, exotic breeds, and how many are domesticated, how many of them are being used by farmers for their own livelihood, how many of these are stray. All of this data is collected in this livestock census. Again, please remember, the one that has started now is the 21st livestock census. That data has not come out so far. The 20th one, the 20th census was in 2019. It is done in once in every 5 years. Started in 1919, so it's a pretty old thing, something that the British had started. Since then, there have been 20 installments that have been done. 21st is the one that is ongoing now, for which the government has already conducted or collected most of the data. This is the timeline. This census and the last one also, both of them are fully digitized. The human census also, it is for our population, the one that we have not conducted since 2021, that also has been completely digitized. So the data collection doesn't have to happen manually. It will all be digital in nature. There will be online data collection via mobile app. So the people who would be conducting that census, who would have to just input the data in the mobile app, it would be tracked real time. Also, there will be monitoring with the use of GPS to record the locations, so that you can make sure that two different people are not counting the same stray. For example, there is someone who has counted a stray dog, that, oh, this is a stray dog, I am making note of that. You don't want that stray dog to be counted once again when someone else comes in. So there is a lot of use of GPS, of technology. GPS location will be tracked of the people who would be collecting all this data to ensure that there is unique data available. But again, unlike humans, there are many more chances of errors in such kind of data collection. In human census also, there will always be issue of duplication. In this also, there will always be issue of duplication. You can't have tracking of all the animals. Some animals are tracked. You will see certain, for example, certain bovine animals, you will see on their ears, there is a tag that is put on their ears. Some of the cows or some of the buffaloes, you might see some tags on their ears, but it can't be done for all the strays. So there will always be an issue of duplication involved, but as far as possible, technology is used so that we can get the absolute correct data. These are some of the features of this 21st livestock census. Information will be collected on 16 animal species specifically, which include cattle, buffalo, mithun, yak, sheep, goat, etc. All of these will be accounted for. Apart from that, census will also account for 219 indigenous breeds, and these breeds are the ones that have been accounted for or that have been made a list of by ICAR, the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. They have a bureau specifically called the National Bureau of Animal Genetics Resources. They are the ones who have decided which species will be included here, and their data will be collected. Apart from that, census will also be carried out on the head count of poultry birds, fowl, chicken, duck, geese. All these will also be counted by the government. See, having all this data at the appropriate level helps the government to make better policy decisions. For example, imagine a certain disease is spreading and amongst the poultry or amongst the bovine animals. When the government knows that how many of these animals are present in the country, it is easier for the government to make better decisions. How much money to allocate to buy drugs or to buy vaccines, how much budget allocation has to be done. All this decision making will be with the help of data, can be made much better with the help of data. This is where such kind of a census can come in. Apart from that, this particular census, that is the 21st one, will also have for the first time data about the pastoralist contribution of livestock sector. So pastoral animals are the ones that the farmers that live with the farmers or farmers basically have to support in their own livelihood. Those are called pastorals. Remember, this is happening for the first time that the data for pastoral animals also is being counted, which was not done so earlier. When something is happening for the first time in a regular exercise, that becomes important for the exam. If this census exercise is carried on once in every 5 years, but for the first time something new is happening, that makes it more important for us from the examination point of view. So do remember that. Apart from that, the census will also take into consideration the data on proportion of household whose primary income comes from livestock earnings specifically, so that we can get to know how many farmers are dependent specifically upon animals for their livelihood. Data will also be gathered on gender distribution for stray cattle. How the stray cattle are of which gender, so that the government can keep a track of that as well. Now, as I told you, the current census for which the data has been collected, the 21st census, for that official data has not come out. However, we do have data about the last census, that is the 20th census. It was done in 2019. So let me show you some of that data at least, so that you can get an idea about what numbers do we have in India, lump sum figure. So in the last census, that was in 2019, the total livestock population was about 535 million, basically 53.5 crores, which was a 4.6% increase from the previous census. In them, if you look at the bovine population specifically, they were about 30.2 crores, that is 302 million. So most of them were bovine. Bovine basically is what? It includes cattle, buffalo, mithun, yak. These are bovine animals. Then comparison of indigenous and exotic breeds. Exotic means that don't belong to India, they're not Indian breeds, they have been brought in from outside. So comparing between indigenous and exotic breeds, indigenous breed population declined by 6%, exotic breeds, crossbreed, their population increased considerably, because the assumption is that a lot more exotic breeds or crossbreeds are able to give more produce, such as milk. So the milk quantity for which they are specifically bred, for which they are specifically kept by the farmer, their milk quantity from exotic species etc. is much higher. So a lot of farmers were tilting towards that as compared to indigenous breeds. That was also a trend that was seen in the last livestock census. This census, again, data has not come out, so we are not sure. The last livestock census also tells us that buffalo population increased by 1%. Sheep and goat population also increased. So all the population is basically increasing only. There is no specific sector where the population has declined. In the poultry sector also, there has been a substantial growth of 16.8%. There is a growth in almost every single sector, as we saw in the last particular answer, last census. This is also an indication that a lot of farmers are trying to diversify their income. A lot of farmers have realized that just by depending on agriculture, they may not be able to sustain and they may not be able to earn the amount of money that they were hoping for. So maybe they are also diversifying into this, and that is why we are seeing a lot more farmers opting for pastoral animals, a lot of farmers opting for, let's say, egg business, a lot of farmers are opting to keep bovine, sell milk. Many cooperatives have come up, Amul being the successful example. Then there are many other state-run cooperatives etc. as well that are encouraging the farmers to enter the milk business. So this increase in population of all these categories of livestock, the bovine and then poultry etc., it is a good enough indication that the farmers themselves want to diversify their earning sources. This is some of the other stats that you should know about what India's livestock population and the data that has come out. If you look at how it has contributed to India's GDP, it has a good enough, a pretty bulky contribution to India's GDP. It contributes 4.11% to India's GDP, that is the livestock sector specifically. Over 1/4 of India's agriculture GDP comes in from the livestock sector, contributes 8.8% or employs 8.8% of India's population. Then if you look at how the livestock population is divided, this figure can be important. Remember, the biggest population share in the livestock population is of the poultry sector. They are the ones who include or who basically have the most population. Again, all these figures are of the 20th livestock census, please remember, because the figures of 21st livestock census has not come out so far. So you have to be very careful. If there is a question in the prelims examination, be very careful about, are they asking about the 20th census or the 21st livestock census, because the 21st livestock census, that is the recent one, the data has been collected but the government has not released it. The data that we are discussing here, all of that is from the 20th livestock census, that was in 2019. In the dairy sector also, India enjoys the leading position in milk production. About 23% of global milk production is in India, but we have so high demand that it is just barely enough for us. It is because of the white revolution led by Amul that our milk production increased significantly in the country. Apart from that, in the livestock sector specifically, there are multiple initiatives that the government has taken in the past few years. Let me just share with you a few examples that can be relevant. We have the Rashtriya Gokul Mission, specifically for conservation of indigenous bovine breed. As I told you, there is an increasing trend in the farmers to opt for exotic species or mixed breeds when it comes to bovine, under the assumption that they will give you more milk production. So the government wants to preserve indigenous species. For that, the Rashtriya Gokul Mission was launched. It is about the breed improvement through IVF technology, making sure that the indigenous population bovine does not get a significant drop. It has also led to establishment of breed multiplication farms, specifically led by private entrepreneurs. There is artificial insemination program to increase the coverage of this entire mission across the entire country. All this is being done specifically to give a push to indigenous species or indigenous bovine species, rather than the farmers shifting more and more towards exotic and the mixed breeds. Another program that the government has put a lot of force behind is something called the National Program for Dairy Development. The National Program for Dairy Development, again as the name suggests, is to give a further push to the milk production in India. Although we are by far the largest producer of milk in the entire world, but because of our high demand specifically, we still would need more milk, and it also has a lot of export potential as well about the milk products. For this, the National Program for Dairy Development has been launched. It is specifically aimed to improve the infrastructure for milk production that will improve the quality of milk, the procurement of milk. It has two components, that is the National Program for Dairy Development. The first component is infrastructure development for milk testing and chilling, because see, when, let's say, take an example of Amul, when different farmers come together and say, okay, we'll run a cooperative, we'll all have milk, we'll together sell this milk, you can't mix up milk of different levels or different qualities. When there are so many different types of milk, you have to first test it and grade the quality of milk. Only similar quality of milk can be mixed up. So you have to first test it, test for the quality. For that, you require significant infrastructure for testing capacity. Second component, that is component number B of National Program for Dairy Development, is enhancing the market access to allow better access to market so that it can be sold easier in the market, and upgrade the dairy processing for organized sales to make sure that the dairies can get their hands on milk, high quality milk in an easier manner, and it can get into the market at a good pace. One more example that I can share with you about India's push in the livestock sector, something called the eGopala app. The eGopala app is a digital platform for livestock management. Again, it gives information about breed improvement, animal health, etc. So if you are a farmer, for example, that has many of these organisms with you, you have livestock, you use them for milk production, etc. If you are one of them and you want information about how to keep them in good health, if you want information about how to, let's say, get them or make them disease free, for all of that, this particular app has been launched called the eGopala app. It supports buying and selling of disease free germplasm. It also provides alert about vaccination programs, pregnancy. As I told you, it's a common, sad but common thing that a lot of diseases start to spread when it comes to livestock and bovine. There have been many of these diseases that the government also is trying to curtail. For that, the government launches vaccination programs, medicines at a lower cost. So how do the farmers get to know about this? This is where the eGopala app comes into the picture. All these are just examples of government initiatives to give a further push to farmers in this sector. Pretty bulky topic. Let's see if you are able to answer a few questions based on this. Read this carefully. All this is important. Read this carefully, lock in your answer, think what the answer should be, and then maybe you can play it again when we discuss this. All right. Consider the following statements regarding the 20th livestock census. What did I tell you? 20th livestock census means the last one. whose data is out. 21st is the latest one, but that their data has not been released completely. The total livestock population in India increased compared to 20th census. Yes, that is correct. It should be 19th rather. Compared to 19th census, it has increased. Yes. Population of indigenous cattle declined while that of exotic and crossbred cattle increased. Yes. We have been discussing how this is a big concern for the government. The farmers' preference for exotic and crossbred because of the assumption that they will be giving much more milk production. That has been a worrying sign for the government. Their population is increasing while the population of indigenous breed is declining. Livestock census conducted by the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying. Yes, that is correct. That works under Ministry of Agriculture. All these three are correct. C would be the correct answer here. Okay. Not a difficult one to answer. All these three given statements are correct. You can take a screenshot here if you wish to. Moving on. It's an assertion reasoning based question. Read it carefully. Pause on this screen and then maybe lock in your answer in your mind and then you can play again. Alright. Assertion. The 20th livestock census recorded a significant increase in backyard poultry population. Yes, we discussed. Basically, just remember every single sector, every single category increased in the 20th census. Whatever they talk about, the poultry, the bovine, the pastoral animals, whatever they say, all of them have increased. Reason that they are giving, the government introduced Kisan credit card for poultry farmers in the same year. Not really. See, 20th livestock census was in 2019. So what they mean to say is that in 2019 itself, the government introduced Kisan credit card. So the farmers had more money so they could expand the production. That is wrong. The Kisan credit card were given to poultry farmers later on. The Kisan credit card is a kind of again a credit instrument given to the farmers specifically. As the name said, they're kind of a credit card. But these were given or made open for the poultry farmers later than 2019. They were not made open for farmers in 2019. So that is not the reason. While assertion is correct, the reasoning is wrong. So the answer here would be C. Again, assertion based or assertion reasoning based questions are common in the UPSC examination. So you should have a practice of how to answer these as well. Answer here would be C. I hope you got this one right as well. If you want, you can take a screenshot from here as well. Then there is a related question, not exactly, but agriculture related question that was asked earlier, slightly difficult. Let's see if we can answer this. This was asked in the prelims exam of 2019. See if you can answer this. You can pause on this screen, think about what the answer should be, and then you can play again. Okay. Consider the following. First, agriculture soils release nitrogen oxides into the environment. Is that true? Yes. So the farmers use urea, for example, in large quantity, and a lot of urea, because it is available at a much lower cost in the market price to the farmers because of the subsidy, they tend to overuse it. So while a part of it is absorbed by the soil and it is used for the plant nutrition, a lot of it remains there and then it becomes a part of the environment because it turns into nitrogen oxide and it releases into the environment. Second, cattle release ammonia into the environment. Yes, cattle do release ammonia into the environment in the form of their waste, in the form of burping, etc. Ammonia is released. Poultry industry releases reactive nitrogen compounds into the environment. Again, yes, absolutely correct. Poultry industry also in the form of their waste products do release significant amount of nitrogen into the atmosphere. All of three are correct. All these three are danger to the environment. However, since these are important, there is not much that the government can do to restrict that. The answer here is D. If you want a proper explanation, this is how it usually works. As I said, cattle excrete a large amount of nitrogen in the urine and in dung. So whatever they excrete, it has nitrogen because, I'm sorry, let me go back. Yeah. So the release urine, the release dung, that has nitrogen. There are emissions of ammonia as well. Similarly, poultry also release nitrogen rich waste. All these are problematic for the environment, but they are released in the environment. Moving on to the next topic then. The next topic that we have here with us is the National Agriculture Code. Now, what exactly is this? If I have to define this in very simple basic terms, it is a kind of a standard that has been released by the government. For example, when you buy something, you say this is ISI mark. ISI mark means there is a standard that it actually fulfills. For example, when you buy something and you want it to be dependable, you want it to be high quality, you look for those ISI marks, you look for those standardized marks. In agriculture field, that is not true, because in agriculture field, we don't have such standardization. This is where the BIS, the Bureau of Indian Standards, has now said that we will also be working to introduce similar kind of standards in the agriculture sector as well, which is where National Agriculture Code comes into the picture. So just like the ISI marks that you have on different products, you will have these marks or similar standard marks in agriculture products as well. This is the simple argument of National Agriculture Code, and as we discussed, this has been formulated by BIS, the Bureau of Indian Standards, the same agency that is responsible for ISI marks, etc. in the country. Now, this is what you have to remember here. This is an important topic for the examination. It will cover a lot of different factors, a lot of different products in the agriculture sector. The idea is simple: to ensure there is standardized agriculture practices in India. Why? For example, let's say someone is growing rice in Bengal and someone is growing rice in Punjab. There may be very different kinds. For example, in Bengal, they may be using a lot more pesticides, or in Punjab, let's say they may be using a lot more pesticides. So the consumer, when they are buying rice, for example, they have no way to know this, that this particular rice that has come in has higher level of pesticide as compared to other, because that is not something that is written on that packaging. So when you have a certain standard imposed, that okay, up till this standard you will get the accreditation by BIS, or if you don't meet the standard, you will not get this accreditation. It works in the interest of the end consumer then. This is the shorter version of the objective. So it will serve as reference for farmers also, agriculture universities also, policy makers, cross-specific patterns, what are the standards that you are expected to abide by. For example, when you're growing paddy, wheat, oilseed, pulses, all of that. It will not just include ability, or it will not just include the parameters of how you are growing your crop. It will also take into consideration your land preparation, soil, plant health management, your irrigation facilities. All of that will be taken into consideration. A record will be maintained for all of them. On the basis of that, whether or not if they specify or if they are able to fulfill a certain criteria, if they are able to qualify that quality test under that, then they will be certified. Otherwise, they will not be certified. It incorporates standard of emerging fields such as organic farming, natural farming, etc. A lot of things that you buy in the market today, on the sticker you would see it is organic and it has a much higher cost. For example, you buy normal potatoes, you might be able to buy it at 20 rupees per kg. Then there is a shop selling organic potatoes and they would sell you at 35 rupees per kg. Now, they have written it on the packaging, but there is no certain way right now to actually ascertain whether it is organic or not. They have written on the packaging, but there is no agency in India that is actually doing a background check to make sure that yes, if they are claiming it to be organic, is it actually organic or not. This is something that will be resolved here. So stuff such as organic farming, natural farming, all that will also be written here, whether you have used certain other kind of technology, so that there is a standard set and the end consumer can take a much more informed decision. It can work in the interest of farmers as well, so that they also know that if they have a higher quality product, they can expect to fetch a better price from the market, because that will act as a differentiating factor for them as well, as compared to products or similar products from someone else in the market. This is where it will be helpful for them. These are the key objectives of launching the National Agriculture Code. First, having national guidelines so that these are available for everyone. To have a national code, it will have proper set agriculture practices, that if you are a rice farmer, you are expected to follow this method. If you are, let's say, cultivating cotton, you're expected to follow these practices. It also considers agroclimatic zones, crop types, etc. All these things will be taken into consideration, and then the guidelines are being issued. Then the other objective, to promote quality culture. As I said, the end consumer has to be assured that whatever you're buying is of a certain quality. If they are promising something, let's say on the packaging, the end consumer should be assured that, okay, this is something that you can trust and this is something that has been standardized and checked by a government agency. It also acts as an effective decision maker. As I said, farming community also can make better decisions here. As a farmer, if you know that if I abide by these practices, I will get the certification, leading to which I might get a better price in the market, the farmer community also will get a push towards it, because the end consumer will also give preference to these kind of products. For example, when you go and buy, let's say, a pressure cooker, and you go and buy pressure cooker of a, let's say, a well-known company, they will say that the pressure cooker is ISI marked. ISI marked basically means that it abides by certain quality standards that have been laid out by the BIS. Similarly, now when you go and buy an agriculture product, a food crop, etc., on their packaging, for example, they can say that our product is actually up to a certain level which has been given to us by the BIS. This is where the consumer's confidence will increase and the consumer would be ready to pay a higher price or would demand that particular project. Apart from that, the other objectives also include integrating with other Indian standards. As I said, the ISI mark, etc., which are issued by BIS, to have a similar kind of a standard there. To incorporate additional agriculture aspects. For example, make our farming much more sustainable, to have much better documentation, so that the farmers, if they are applying for certain standardization or certain certificate, they'll have to maintain a record. That will make it easier to trace the farming, that will make it easier to trace the practices that are being done, and it will also help in capacity building. Capacity building basically means giving more skills, pushing the farmers to do the right thing, helping them or to adopt these kind of practices. All of this is a laid out objective of the National Agriculture Code. Now, how much of this are they able to achieve, how much of it is not being achieved, that's a different story altogether, but at least this is what they are aiming for. This is the entire body that works behind it. The body that is responsible for maintaining standards in India, that is the BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. It is a statutory body and it was set up under the Bureau of Indian Standards Act of 1986. It replaced an earlier body which is the ISI. So the ISI mark that you have, it is because the body earlier was called ISI only, that is Indian Standards Institutions. That was replaced. This was a much older body. The body that we have now, BIS, it works under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Distribution, because they are looking into consumer welfare. There are multiple types of certification that they give out, depending upon whichever kind of product it is, whichever kind of field we are talking about. There is ISI mark, as you are talking about. It certifies that product is of a certain quality. So when you're buying it, for example, even let's say when you're buying a bike helmet, and you should wear a helmet if you're riding a two-wheeler. If you're buying a helmet, you would see certain helmet companies put a sticker or claim that we are ISI marked or we are ISI certified. That also is because, again, they have lived up to a certain standard. It's, again, if you want to take one more example, it's similar to, when you buy a car and the cars have a safety rating because they have been put through a crash test, the NCAP crash test, and there's a 5-star safety rating, 3-star safety rating, or 2 or 1-star safety rating. It's similar to that, because when you're buying a car and you know that there's a certain safety rating, you can make up your mind that, okay, this is what I can expect from this car and this is what I should not expect. Similar is what the BIS is trying to do, that when you are actually buying a certain product, when you see their marking, you can make up your mind what can you expect and what should you not expect. Apart from ISI, they also certify Hallmark. Hallmark is specifically for gold and silver jewelry. So when you do go to these shops, the high-end jewelry shops, etc., they will say that our product is certified. So who certifies it? Who is the agency behind it? It is the BIS only. In that case, the standard that is issued is called Hallmark. So that is Hallmark jewelry, Hallmark gold and silver jewelry. Then there's eco-mark. Eco-mark is specifically for those products which are which claim to be environmentally clean, environmentally sustainable, which claim that while making of our product we did not harm the environment. So if the ISI or if the BSI or BIS rather, sorry, certifies it, that means that you can be rest assured that while making of this product, environment was not harmed. So for example, if let's say you want to buy a certain product from the market and you are very, if you are a person who is very aware of the environmental damages and you don't want to buy any product that has caused harm to environment, that mark helps you out to choose those products. Then there's compulsory registration scheme, CRS, for specified electronics and IT goods. So they have to register under this scheme. All of this is done by the BIS overall to maintain quality, to maintain standards in different sectors in India. That is the job of BIS. They are a part of they represent India rather in International Organization for Standardization, that is ISO. You would have seen this, ISO marked this or ISO this or ISO this certified. That is international level standard certification. Many countries around the world, most of them do have such a body that represent their country respectively in the international organization. The BIS does this for India. I have a few practice questions on this for you if you understood the topic. Read this carefully till the very end, make up your mind, maybe pause on this screen and then play again to see if you got the answer right. Got it? All right then. Consider the following statements regarding National Agriculture Code. First, the NAC ensures standardization of agricultural data across all Indian states and union territories. Yes, that is what we have been discussing. That is the entire objective of NAC, to have a standard across the entire country. Doesn't matter if you are buying something that grew in Tamil Nadu or in Mizoram or in Gujarat or in Punjab, you would be able to get assurance that yes, this has lived up to a certain standard. So that is the entire idea. Second, it covers only crop-based agricultural activities. No, we just discussed this. It is a comprehensive coverage of each and every process involved in agriculture. So for example, your land management, your irrigation activities, your packaging, every single thing will be taken into consideration before the BIS decides to give you a certain certification. So it is not that only the cropping pattern, only the things of how you are growing, only crop-based agriculture activities will not be taken into consideration. It's a much broader, much wider framework that is involved here. Second is wrong. Third, the NAC facilitates integration with international agriculture classification systems. Yes, that is what we just discussed. Because the BIS is a part of ISO International Standardization Organization, the result will be that if a certification is given by BIS, it will be valid internationally. So what it means is, for example, tomorrow if a farmer in India grows, let's say, certain vegetable or a certain fruit, and that fruit is now being exported to a country, let's say UAE, or it's going to a Western country, let's say a European country or US, they will also understand and accept this standardization that has been given from India. Because BIS is a part of this international framework, so whatever products are being certified here will be accepted around the world. That's very important anyways, because see, especially in terms of agriculture, fruits and vegetables, a lot of stuff from India gets exported. In fact, if you look at it very carefully, it is said that some of the best products that India grows is actually exported. The best quality fruit, the best quality vegetables all get exported from India to be consumed in countries where the consumers are ready to pay a much higher price. There are so many countries around the world. Look at West Asia, UAE, Saudi Arabia. They have almost zero agriculture. Almost everything that they consume is imported from outside. Fruits, vegetables, etc. Lot of it comes from India. And when these countries, which are again high-paying countries, remember, where per capita income is high, where the consumer does not mind paying a higher price if they are assured of a better quality, for that countries to export stuff to these countries it's important that you live up to a certain standard, and that standard essentially should be acceptable around the world for it to be successful. This is where BIS comes into the picture, and this is where National Agriculture Code, because it will be accepted around the world, it is integrated with the other countries, that is where it will be important. So the answer is 1 and 3. 2 of these 3 given statements are correct. The answer will be B. Okay, 2 of these are correct, 1 is wrong. If you want, you can take a screenshot from here to revise later on. Moving on. Again, read this carefully. It's an assertion, reason based question. Read this carefully. Lock in your answer, think about what the answer should be from your point of view, and then you can play again. All right. The assertion is, implementation of National Agriculture Code improves the accuracy and comparability of agriculture statistics in India. That is the entire objective of it, as we have been saying. It will put one single standard across the country, across the states and the UT, so you can compare stuff that is produced in different parts of the country. So again, if there is something produced in Gujarat, it can be compared to something produced in other parts of the country, so that you can make a much more informed decision. Earlier, or in fact till today, there was no such standardized practice. So first is correct. Second, the NSE mandates uniform data collection formats across different states and departments. This part again is correct. This is how the standards are set. See, if you allow everyone to collect their data in a format that they want, if you allow everyone to store the data or values in the manner that they want, then there is no standardization. The entire idea of standardization is that everyone has to collect the data, has to collect the values in certain set format, so that they can then be certified by an organization such as BIS, and then the standardization can be accorded to them, or a certain certificate can be given to them. So second is correct. Not just it is correct, apart from this, you also have to tell, if you look at first and the second options here, both of these are true, but you also have to say or tell whether reason is the correct explanation of assertion or not, because just identifying both these statements as true will not give you the answer. So does reason justify the assertion, or does it explain the assertion? Yes. The reason again is that because they are being asked to collect all that data in one single format without any diversion, that is why it will be able to implement this with accuracy and comparability, or comparability will be ensured across the entire country. So reasoning is the correct argument. This is the reason why assertion is correct. So in this case, the answer will be A. Not just the fact that both are correct, but also reason correctly examines or correctly explains why the assertion is correct. So the answer here would be A. If you want, again, you can take a screenshot, it's all yours. One more question, that will be a previous year question from this part. Again, this is a pretty, I would say, easy question if you have been reading this. It was asked in 2019. The terms agreement on agriculture, agreement on application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and peace clause, they appear in the news frequently on the context in the affairs of what? So what are they related to? FAO, UNFCCC, WTO, or UNEP? It's a very, very simple question. The answer is WTO. It is a WTO, that is a World Trade Organization, that has all these things in the news. Very simple, straightforward. WTO anyways remains in the news quite a lot because of all these things. There are different agreements that have been formed. Now, just to inform you, because it's an important topic, so I want to share a bit more details with you specifically about WTO. WTO has something called Agreement on Agriculture. Now, Agreement on Agriculture in simple terms means WTO says that countries should not give a lot of subsidy, especially in the field of agriculture. For example, when the Indian government gives subsidy to our farmers, farmers will then sell that produce to our other countries. Let's say they sell cheap rice to Nepal or Bangladesh, then what will happen to rice producing in their country? So as per WTO, giving a lot of subsidies will distort international trade. WTO says that in the field of agriculture, there are 3 types of subsidies. You all would have read about this. As per WTO, the 3 types of subsidy in agriculture is amber subsidy, blue subsidy, green subsidy, or amber box, blue box and green box. While blue box and green box are allowed, amber box subsidy has to be restricted. Restricted how? As per WTO, developing countries can only give 10% of their production value as subsidy, while the developed countries can give 5% of their production value as a subsidy. So whatever you produce, 10% of that can be the subsidy bill. For Government of India, because we run a huge food security program, for us our subsidy bill goes beyond 10%. That is a big problem. So that other countries don't argue against us, so that other countries don't file a case against us in WTO, there is something called the peace clause. Peace clause is the one where the countries agree that okay, we will not file a case against developing countries if their subsidy bill goes beyond 10%. All that is a part of agreement on agriculture. In short, AOA. Indian argument is that we give subsidy to the farmers not because we want to distort international trade. We give subsidy to our farmers because there are a lot of poor people in India that cannot afford food by themselves. Now, just a bit of more information. The agreement on agriculture has 3 main pillars. First, domestic support. That is, if you are giving a subsidy within your country that is not distorting international trade, then it is allowed. But if you give up subsidy that floods the international market, that is a problem. Because WTO essentially does not want any distortion in the international market. So international trade distorting subsidies are not allowed, number 1. Second pillar is market access. That is, WTO says that your country should open market to every other country. Opposite of it is what happening in the US right now. With US increasing tariffs considerably, they are blocking their market access. But WTO says, by the way, China has gone to WTO against the US. It will not have any effect on US. But WTO also says there should be market access that should be allowed. Developed countries especially should reduce their tariffs, should allow developing countries to bring their products and sell in their countries. And the third pillar that WTO talks about is export subsidies. That is, export subsidies should be reduced because when you give export subsidies, your products will flood the other country's market. That should not be allowed. These are 3 main pillars of WTO. WTO anyways is one of those topics that consistently gets asked in the examination in different ways. This also brings us to the end of today's session. This was class number 5 of this ongoing prelims crash course. For economics, it was part number 5. We have a lot more classes of economics coming up from Monday to Saturday at 12 p.m. where we will be covering all the important current affairs related to economics in the last year or so. Do join us tomorrow as well, right here at 12, to make sure that every single thing related to economics is covered up by you. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new here, do hit the like and the subscribe button. My name is Harshmeet Singh and I'll see you tomorrow once again. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.